It's New Year's Eve at GB News. We are live tonight as 2021 goes down the toilet of history. If you're worried that it might claw its way back up to torment us for another 3 or 4 months, don't worry. Madonna is standing or actually sitting guard. She released a photograph of herself, there it is, on the toilet for New Year. I don't know where in the world that is a New Year tradition, but if you're in the country in which the sitting on the toilet for New Year tradition originated, for God's sake, don't send me any more pictures. Anyway, Madonna for some reason chose to release a photograph of herself on the toilet for New Year, but we should all be grateful at least she didn't release a new CD. At the Downing Street New Year press briefing, Sir Patrick Vallance and Professor Chris Whitty were asked by the BBC, should old acquaintance be forgot? And their advice is, oh, definitely, even if your old acquaintance is quadruple jabbed. It's just not worth the risk. Forget about him. What do you think are going to be the big stories of 2022? The migrant fiasco on England's southern shore, Chinese moves on Taiwan, whatever it is, let me know via email, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or via Twitter @gbnews. The management cautioned me before tonight's show that under no circumstances am I to do a retrospective look back at the last 12 months because everybody and his Auntie Mabel has done a retrospective look back by now. So I thought we'd do a retrospective look back at everybody else's retrospective look backs. No, I'm just kidding. Instead of a retrospective on 2021, how about a retrospective on 1921? Bear with me on this. The big news of December 1921 was the agreement between His Majesty's government and Irish Republican revolutionaries to create the Irish Free State. And somewhat to the surprise of London, yeah, there they all are. That's that one at the far right is Arthur Griffith. Let me work this out. My great uncle was his lawyer. Small world. Anyway, somewhat to the surprise, that's the Irish delegation, somewhat to the surprise of London, Dublin and Belfast, that settlement of 1921 has lasted, despite the best efforts of the IRA, for a century, until Brexit and COVID. Boris Johnson's deal with the EU moved the border into the Irish Sea, and under cover of COVID, the Irish government has been hardening that border, in effect shrinking the common travel area from the entire British Isles to merely the island of Ireland. And Boris Johnson, a man who just 2 years ago said he wanted to be known not as Prime Minister, but Minister of the Union, is letting his nation's borders be redrawn by Brussels and Dublin. Okay, enough of 1921. How about a retrospective 1821? In 1821, James Monroe began his second term as President of the United States. He's the fellow who came up with the Monroe Doctrine to end any further expansion in the Americas by other great powers and to regard any foreign interference in Central and Southern America as a threat to the United States. Right now, 200 years on, Chinese money is hollowing out and buying up Latin America one by one, as it's doing with the Commonwealth. And the dead husk that is Joe Biden is letting it happen, notwithstanding the Monroe Doctrine. China has hypersonic weapons, that's space nukes in common parlance. So does Russia. And the Pentagon, never mind Her Majesty's Armed Forces, can't seem to get it together on that front to get any hypersonic weapons of our own. The Daily Mail reports that Chairman Xi is developing brain control weaponry that can paralyze the brains of its enemies and take control of them. Seriously. This is happening at China's Academy of Military Sciences. The brain paralysis technology is in its early stages, but there are indications the Politburo has begun testing it on the G7.
Okay, hang on. Sorry. Oh.
He's not the only one they've zapped with the brain paralysis machine.
Forgive me. Forgive me.
I won't show you the Justin Trudeau one, but he gets out the shoe polish again and goes into his routine. Okay, so much for our retrospective of 1821. How about 1721? The big story in 1721 was the Great Plague riots. Yeah, they had some sort of bubonic pandemic in Moscow, but the riots were caused not by the plague, but by the government lockdown and the enforced tanking of the Russian economy. Of course, the Muscovites were a primitive people and didn't know how to follow the science, as they say, so instead they followed it to the Kremlin and sacked it. That breaking news, boys and girls, from 1721 has no relevance to our own time. Don't even think about it. Okay, one more from our retrospective of 1521. That's 500 years ago. In 1521, Suleiman the Magnificent, the all-powerful Ottoman Sultan, you know he's all-powerful because look at the size of that turban. It's either a turban or an upturned pumpkin on his head. You can, girls, you can never tell anything about a guy from the size of his turban, but that is an impressive one. The all-powerful Ottoman Sultan, Suleiman the Magnificent, presided over the biggest expansion of the Islamic Caliphate, and he launched the siege of Belgrade. Since then, of course, we've become far more enlightened and understand that all Suleiman the Magnificent needed was a couple of months in de-radicalization class.